Morning and welcome to the chat on Newsday Amarillo and News Channel 10-2. I'm David Lovejoy.
Good morning. I'm Rhonda Lahnert.
And I'm the extremely contentious Chuckalicious Chuck Williams.
And it's Wednesday. It's a kind of a day we can all kind of breathe a sigh of relief. Our man Jody Holland joins us, and we get better each and every week with Jody Holland. Jody, how you doing today, brother?
Doing fantastic. Been thinking about how we get better together and how we do things different together.
That's it. That's what it's all about. Chuck, go ahead. You got a question for Jody?
Jody, it appears to me that you hit it right on the head. How we all come together, but we come together at a different point. And when you're setting your mind, when you have that mindset, you kind of have to compromise, for want of a better term. But compromise isn't the easiest thing in the world, is it?
Oh, definitely not. I mean, it's difficult for anybody to see from a different angle, but there's some aspects of it that are interesting. When you're in a group and you want to fit in,
right,
then compromise becomes pretty easy. But when you're one-on-one and you're going back and forth about what you want for dinner or
right,
what the right path is for the next step in the business, then it becomes difficult. So you think about how different we are when we're in a group. Let's say you're in a staff meeting, and you've got a strong leader in the staff meeting, and the strong leader says something to the effect of, "This is where I really want to go. Any feedback, guys?" And they say it really strongly like that. Most people are going to just go, okay. And then when they walk out of the meeting, they're going to go, "Are you kidding me right now? Worst idea I've ever heard in my life." And they'll talk about it with each other, but they won't speak up in the meeting. So sometimes when we're in group settings like that, we don't have the level of trust to be vulnerable and to be open. So we keep our mouths shut. From a psychological perspective, that's called groupthink. And the term was coined back in 1952 by Dr. Irving Janis. And then several other folks have kind of gone on research. My favorite one was a guy named George Harvey in the 80s. And he wrote a book called The Road to Abilene. And he tells this story about this son-in-law, brand new son-in-law, sitting on the porch with his father-in-law. And it's really hot. It's in Coleman, Texas. And they're just sitting there kind of visiting. And then all of a sudden the father-in-law says, "If you wanted to, we could go over to Abilene for lunch." And he picks a restaurant. And the son-in-law hates that restaurant. But instead of saying, "No, man, I hate that restaurant. Anywhere but there," he goes, "Well, I guess if you want to." And so he agrees to it. And about that time, his wife is walking out on the porch. "What are you guys talking about?" The father-in-law says, "Well, he just said he wanted to go to this restaurant," which he didn't say. He said if the father-in-law wanted to, he would go. So then the daughter is like, "Well, I guess if that's what y'all want to do, that's fine." She hated the restaurant also. Mother-in-law everybody hated the restaurant, but it was a suggestion. And it was a suggestion by the guy in charge.
right.
So you think about that from a business standpoint, you got to be very careful as a leader how you make your suggestions, because it does change the way that people are going to act and interact with you. But you also have to think about the fact that, let's say you're in a group setting. Even like this, where you're on the radio, there's a phenomenon called social facilitation. This is where you become hyper-focused because people are paying attention. But there's the other side of that too, which is social loafing. When people are paying attention, but you don't think you'll be valued, or you don't want to appear too eager, then you're lazy. So I think of it like this. When I used to go watch a lot of NBA, and the players would drag their feet out onto the court before the game started. And then the moment the game started, they're like rockets up and down the court, no hesitation, no laziness. So they're social loafing on the easy thing coming out of the locker room, and social facilitation took effect when they were playing the actual game because they knew people were paying attention. And so it's kind of interesting. There's so many things that impact us as we make decisions, but the majority of it is us imagining what other people are imagining about us, which is called the looking glass theory. So Chuck, you and you're not thinking about what I am like. You're thinking about what I think you are like. And that's the looking glass. So we're seeing ourselves or imagining that we're seeing ourselves through the eyes of others. And that's what plays into that social loafing and social facilitation. So it's fascinating because it only takes a few people getting together before everybody's actions and behaviors start to change. We just do things so differently.
Do you feel like things like I'm thinking, of course, personality types play into this, but things like also like birth order and things like that would be, influential on whether you're one of those leaders, you're one of those followers.
I do think that there's a lot that plays into that, and personality being a big one, values being another big one. Birth order is kind of interesting because I think it used to be really predictable. And this is
Right.
just an observation. There's no science behind what I'm saying on the birth order thing. I've read one book on it, but I used to think, if you look at it, the oldest one was always a certain way, the youngest was always a certain way, the middle was always a certain way. And now we don't typically have as many kids. So if you're only having two kids, the oldest and the youngest, I don't know that there's that big of a difference based on the birth order. I think when you had five kids, yeah, that oldest one had to be the most responsible, particularly the oldest female, because the expectation at that time was you will be mama number two and help
Right.
take care of the kids. So they developed that sense of responsibility really early. So it's not really the birth order, it's the conditioning and the experiences, I think, that change it. Now, the personality thing, absolutely. An extrovert, always going to speak up. An introvert, probably going to hang in the back and wait for everybody to do what they're going to do. So it varies with some of that.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk to Jody about being voluntold and also the difference between making a decision and passing the buck. We get better right here on the chat with Jody Holland on Newsday Amarillo and News Channel 10-2.